Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Mark Williams, Business Development Manager at PFP, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Dominic Bartholdi, Chief Commercial Officer at our R&D Partners GovGrant. So Dominic is going to go through and provide us all with an update on R&D tax relief and patent box, which includes an overview of the trends and statistics that we have seen and what can we expect, together with the attitude change from the revenue, what to look out for, and how we can support. So please ask questions throughout. There is a questions tab on the platform for you to answer those questions, and we'll get through those as we go through the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dom to start the presentation. Good afternoon, Dom.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So I'll try and keep the timing to around sort of 30 minutes, and more than happy to receive questions as we go if anything pops up that anyone wants to get into some detail on. As far as the topics today, we've already covered those off. I think you've you received the invitation what we're going to go through. So if I can just click this on. A very quick intro to us and what we're doing here, to thinking that we can talk to you about this kind of thing. We're certainly one of the leading specialists when it comes to research and development. Been operating since 2006, so we've seen a lot, and we've certainly been very close to legislative changes throughout that time, having made over 9,000 successful client claims and delivered very significant benefit to our clients. That is across patent box and across R&D tax, and as you'll see, patent box still quite sort of underclaimed as an area, and pushed by HMRC. So hopefully we can see an uptick in that over the next few years. We certainly feel, and our clients agree, that we've got an unrivaled knowledge of how IP and R&D work hand in hand, and how you can use your intellectual property, or your clients can use their intellectual property, to actually improve their R&D position, but also to improve their incentive claims from HMRC as well. Another thing we want to talk to you about today very briefly is elevation, which is a dedicated area for our accountant partners to use, and our accountant partner management team spend a lot of time with our partners walking through what that means and how that works, and we'll show you a little bit about that later today. So that's certainly our investment in the integrity of the scheme, and something that our partners really value and find very, very useful as a self-service claim area, a self-service tool for their client claims, but also a claim builder for themselves to do their own small R&D claims. So compliance, integrity, and long-term value creation are absolutely the pillars of the service that we offer. If we're not driving value, we're not doing the right thing. And if we're not doing it in an honest and compliant way, our business doesn't exist. So they're absolutely the pillars of what we're basing our service on. So for today, a quick overview of the recent statistics, a couple of months, well, not even that old, from HMRC, what they tell us about R&D tax relief and what they tell us about patent box, a little bit about increased scrutiny from HMRC on R&D tax relief, and then a talk, as I said, about through the solution we offer on elevation, and really what accountants should be looking at now as we get towards year end for clients, so calendar year end and year end for a lot of the clients that we work with. So the latest scheme statistics for R&D, I don't suppose they hold too much surprises, or too many surprises for us rather. The increase from last year in terms of the volume of claims made, and these statistics are the latest. I know it says 19 to 20, but that's how HMRC published them. 16% up on the prior year in terms of volume, and 16% up for SMEs as well. And there's no coincidence there. There's also a bigger increase in terms of the value that has been claimed back as well. So it's definitely on the up. More people are taking ownership of their entitlement, and to some degree, there are more people jumping on the bandwagon that perhaps shouldn't be, and that leads into why HMRC's scrutiny of the scheme has gone up. But it's still something that's backed by the government, still something they're looking to incentivise, and that's certainly working on the R&D tax side. And when you look at the claimant areas, there aren't too many surprises there either, because manufacturing, science, and technical sort of IT, information and communication is what what HMRC calls software businesses. Basically, people that claim on software is under information and communication, and they're predominantly software-driven claims. So those areas are absolutely no news to us. It's almost news that it's only 64% and not more, because that seems to be the majority of the conversations we have. The rest of the pie is made up of a number of different sectors. The vast majority of those claims are still coming from London and the southeast. 60% of the total amount claimed from that area. And again, it isn't really a surprise, but part of the levelling up agenda from the government, certainly the current government, should see a bit of a shift as we're putting more emphasis on the rest of the country, which we should be, and also into Scotland and Wales as well. So in terms of patent box, you'll see that the numbers are very different. Okay, the increases and the changes or decreases year on year are almost at poles with what's going on with R&D. So there are fewer companies that have claimed patent box in this period, which is strange. Why? There hasn't been a drop off in the number of businesses filing for patents, but there has been a decrease perhaps in the number of businesses that have been profitable through the period. Don't know, speculating there, but it's gone down, which is the wrong way for this to go. But in terms of SME claims, there has been a slight growth, and now that is good news, but it's not really growing at a rate that's very helpful to the economy, because 0.5% is not really a meaningful shift. And when you see in a minute how many SMEs make a claim for patent box, you'll see why I say that. In terms of the revenue, or rather the value, not the revenue, the value of the claims that have come through, there has been an increase, more so than the increase in claims. So claims have actually gone down, but value's gone up. So, the businesses that do have patents in there are really capitalizing on this scheme and using the value that it creates, because it is a very significant value driver in businesses that are making profit, reducing their corporation tax rate down to 10% from the 19% rate that most are already paying. So in terms of what makes up the patent box sort of claim portfolio, 92% of the companies that have claimed relief were large. Okay, so that's a staggering amount, really, and by large we mean RDEC as opposed to SME. The breakpoint being 500 or more staff or assets in excess of 100 million turnover when you get down to the granular level. So large companies are disproportionately claiming against patent box, and some people might look at that and go, yeah, well, that makes sense because they're the only ones that can afford to patent, or they're the only ones that have a patent strategy. And perhaps that's the case when you consider how the patent world is set up. It is quite a closed community, and it can be perceived as a difficult thing to do. And also people sometimes only think about entering into a patent if they want to protect a particular technology, product or process from the rest of the world. And there are various reasons you might want to patent outside that, and perhaps people are not quite as aware of that as they should be. So the biggest chunk of contributing industry rather is manufacturing, and outside that, professional, scientific and technological, and strangely enough, some in wholesale and retail trade as well. Now those sectors from HMRC, they are quite broad, so there are businesses you often find in there that don't feel like they belong in that sector, and because of the volume of claims that are going through, it could be just a few really big ones that are skewing, and often that is the case with these. So patent box broadly following the same trend as R&D tax in terms of the area of the UK that's claiming, but there is a small pocket in the northeast, which is great, and that's probably just a small handful of businesses that are very profitable that have got their address registered there, as opposed to a particular patent drive in the northeast. But interesting to see anyway, and interesting to see that it does broadly follow along as R&D does. So what do the stats tell us about it, right? So it is the highest yearly figure for R&D tax relief, and it's on the rise, and it's going to continue, we're sure. But it's not doing the same for patent box. and why not? Why don't we see the same increase in patent box? And as I said before, I think part of that is down to perception from the business population at large, but also down to, you know, how people actually use patents and whether or not they even know they exist in the companies they work at. Half the time they don't even know. So how does R&D actually link through to the patent box scheme? And does the government's industrial strategy even consider that? You know, it doesn't really. It doesn't push it hard enough. And we think that businesses who are claiming for R&D tax but not looking at their patent portfolio, their intellectual property, seeing how that can work for them, they're really missing a trick. And the government is incentivizing very heavily through patent box, but perhaps driving that journey is where there's a missing link. I think another really important standout from the stats is that SMEs are still nowhere near the races when it comes to patents and claiming for patent box. Considering the benefit that it would drive to a business, it sticks out as something that they should be looking at and should be taking advantage of. But again, startups, smaller businesses, people that you might have as your clients, looking at, you know, how should they get involved? What should they do? Is there a service out there that's reputable and usable for us? And how do we engage in those without putting ourselves in a compliant black hole or opening ourselves up for trouble that we really don't need because we're trying to grow a business here? You know, those are questions we've asked ourselves, and that's certainly a big chunk of why we've created the Elevation platform for our accountants, really to give that opportunity to smaller businesses to get onto the R&D ladder in an accessible way, and also then perhaps capitalize on their intellectual property if they do want to have a conversation with us further down the line. So just to finish on patent box scheme, so, you know, the value claim through R&D schemes through the year, you know, SMEs account for a big chunk of that. Okay, a massive chunk in yellow on the left there, but actually for patent box, it's the smallest part of the Pac-Man there. You know, it's just the mouth, and the large companies are still all over this. And part of that, as I said earlier, they've got IP strategies, intellectual property strategies. They've got teams of people that sit around it and they understand why they should patent. And typically they do that for you know, non-commercial reasons in terms of you know, they want to protect something, or they want to just do it to show that they're cool. You know, that's it's important sometimes to show that you're academically above the rest, and sometimes that can be very useful. But if you then have this route through to patent box, where you can then take a reduction in your corporation tax rate on the profits related to your patent, it becomes all the more attractive. But large companies definitely tune into it, SMEs not so much. And knowing that you can actually patent for a lot less than people think, less than 10K in most opportunities, certainly where we're involved, it becomes a lot more of an interesting conversation for them. So a very short piece here on increased scrutiny around R&D tax, more so than patent box by HMRC. And we focus on R&D tax here because patent box is still on a growth curve. The government's still trying to push it. It's still not got it quite right. And they're still trying to invite people in and educate. And they're learning themselves as well. You know, there are not hundreds of thousands of claims going through patent box. So there are still conversations to be had with HMRC when you're putting through larger claims about how that works. With R&D tax, the journey's taken a very different path. And you know, the mood's definitely changing from HMRC. If you go back to the early days when the scheme came out in the early thousands, 2001, 2000, you know, is very much an educational period, you know, 5-10 years of, look, come and get involved, businesses. Do believe the hype. It's not free money from the government, but, you know, it's a good route for you to get the money back if you are innovating. The message is now changing. It's less educational and it's more, you know, there are a lot of people out there in the market that can help you. There are accountants that you trust who have been trained, who know what they're talking about. They can help you. You can speak to R&D specialists. They can help you. You can speak to any number of people who can help you with this. You don't need to be going, you know, sort of paddling your own canoe here, going it alone and fundamentally putting in something that is negligent. Okay, so negligence is no longer an excuse, and you know, having the insurances that sit alongside people like us, people like yourselves, you know, reputable professionals, that gives a security blanket to businesses that should be looking at R&D. So bad behaviour is out there. It's definitely apparent. We see it in software claims. We see it in all sorts of claims where people are putting in for things that really aren't compliant. And the majority of the time, we like to think that that is just negligent. Sometimes it isn't. It's a genuine, chancing of the hand. Agents are definitely becoming a problem. We're an agent here, but we are not a problem agent. We are trying to very hard to differentiate ourselves and prove how different we are from that part of the market, because just because a business started last week and it knows how to do R&D doesn't mean it's going to do it in a compliant way. And saying that something's R&D when it isn't, because you haven't been through the trials and tests with HMRC to check it, it causes a problem, because the end client thinks what they've got is great and they can go ahead and make their claim, no problem at all. The agent's driving bad behaviour and poor compliance. And so there's this bit of a circle perpetuating itself. So we see a very important thing here around compliance, about making sure that if you're going to put your hands in the government's pockets here to take money, you do it in a compliant fashion, and you do it in a way that's going to contribute towards the spirit of the scheme. Okay, so understanding the spirit of the scheme and why it's in place is absolutely critical. HMRC have invested in a number of software inspectors, so people who actually understand the software side of R&D. And to the point earlier I made where you yourselves may have made claims you may not have done, but you'll recognise there is a point at which technical compliance is above and beyond perhaps your own skill set. And we see that time and time again, where people are trying to talk at a level about a technical matter, subject matter, which they're perhaps not quite in the detail of as they need to be, and software is one of them. So these HMRC inspectors know software, and they know what is potentially a baseline in that particular area of claim, and they are going after people who are getting it wrong, because this whole idea of educating, poor you, let's help you get it right, has turned to, you've got it wrong, you've got enough choices, we're going to come after you, and we're going to use our powers to fine if we think that there has been some real abuse here. So it's not only saying we're going to stop you from getting your benefit and claw that back, it then goes as far as to say we can actually now fine you, the end client, up to the value of that claim amount. So if somebody's really sort of playing fast and loose with it and putting in something that's clearly spurious and misleading, they can get fined. So in all of this, the thing from HMRC is the Treasury getting the intended return from the scheme, and we very much feel that we're part of that journey, because we will stand by every claim that we work on, whether it's on R&D and patent box, and we'll defend that if we need to with HMRC, because it's absolutely critical that if we're going to put our name against something, that we continue to hold it there. We hold ourselves to account, and we think it's very important that we put ourselves out there and try and help that help make sure the return is where it should be. So a quick bit about elevation and why it helps to put accountants in control of the claim process and how it reduces risks really for you and for your clients. So elevation is a dedicated accountant area. We don't give it out to anybody who isn't partnered with us as an accountant, and through PFP we run a program of sort of contact and sort of developing and turning on those partner relationships. So if you're interested, we're more than happy to talk, of course. But the whole elevation area, it's a dedicated portal. It's free of charge to our partners, doesn't require specific software, it's web-based, and we put all of the details for our partners to see in real time. Okay, so we're not trying to hide anything. It's very transparent. We want our partners to be part of the conversation, not an afterthought. And that's something that a lot of people have told us in the past. It feels like if there's an R&D claim going on, or if it's patent box, well, we might eventually find out what's going on with our client. And that's the wrong way around. As a trusted advisor to the client and the custodian of their finances, certainly to a certain degree, you should be part of the conversation. That's what this does. Okay, so we also give an opportunity for our partners to pop client details in there, so it's all done securely online, and you can put the client details in there, and we'll review that to see if actually there's any potential R&D in there for you, and then we can go ahead and help you deliver to that as the client needs. The claim builder, I'll show you in a sec. I'll show you what it looks like. It's really intuitive. We're very, very clear that there is a point at which software solutions do not deliver compliant R&D claims. And this whole idea that you can use a piece of software that doesn't walk the floors, that doesn't look a business owner and a technician in the eyes to understand what they're doing. A form filling service will only go so far to deliver a compliant claim. After that point, it will just drive poor compliance and the outputs will be wrong. So we've got a small claims builder that we allow people to access, and it delivers a compliant and very, very good looking claim report based on our knowledge of industry. So we've got algorithms sit in the background that plot the answers that we're given against what we know from the claims that we've done, and also from HMRC's experience as well, because we use their data as well to plug into it, and we give a claim report at the end. So as I mentioned before, full visibility of your client claim process. If you have referred people to us, we'll put those through, show you every stage what's going on. You'll see who's talking to who, you'll see who your account manager is, you'll see which technical specialist is working on it, because it's important that we speak the language of the client, so we put the right technical specialist on it. And also we've got the knowledge content and CPD accredited training hub, which is, it's not quite activated yet, but it's imminent. So that's coming down the track for our partners too. So this is what Platform looks like. So Platform is our small claims builder. A couple of screenshots there, and it's not going to take you through the whole thing because it's it's a fair few screens, but they're very intuitive and very normally worded questions. We're not asking you to tell us, what is the scientific advancement in XYZ industry. We're asking you about the level of complexity. We're asking you about which sectors. We're asking you some other details which you will know. Okay. For the most part, the information will be at your fingertips. For some of it, for the financials, you'll need to go off and find the detail, but it's all there, sort of ready to go. It's supposed to be quite easy for you. So you can see from the interface there, pretty straightforward. Hover over us to ask questions if you need to, and then you can see all the claims that you're working on. And again, this is free. Okay, it's free to use for small claims up to a QE of, I think, 30 grand, 35k, and that's because we know that after that the claims will become too complicated. So it's a way for you guys to add value to your clients that are on the smaller side, if you have the appetite to do it, and really deliver some value. So you can see all your claims there on the right hand side of the screen. You can click into them, see what's complete, see what's not, see what the state is of it, and at the end you get your PDF printout of the complete claim document as well. So this foundation side of the portal, this is where you see your claims that have been passed to us. So if you partner with us and you say, hey, I don't want to get involved in this one, or it's too complex, whatever it is, or maybe it's on the intellectual property side, pass it over to us. We'll be able to run that through, and we'll show you real time what's going on. So you see which claims are active, what status they're at, and you'll be able to see everything about that, values associated with it, as I said earlier, people, contact details, who to speak to. And if a client phones you up and says, oh, where are these guys with my claim, you can quickly log in and go, oh, I can see they're waiting for some information from you. Okay, oh right, well, what will that be then? Okay, and then you can see what's going on. So it's quite nice for that, if you want to get that involved. If you don't, believe me, the process will just run itself. That's what we do day in, day out. So Foundation and the Elevation platform is definitely our investment in the integrity of the scheme, and we do that because, fine, we'll get relationships and they'll grow, and maybe there'll be some referrals, and we can make some money at the end of that, no problem. But we do recognise that software claim solutions are a problem. We recognise that agents are a problem. So this is our investment in the integrity of the scheme as well, because we know we can do it better, because we've seen with our own eyes how some of the software solutions work. We don't agree, and so we've developed our own, and we'll make it free to use because we want people to be able to get through and do this in a compliant way as a light touch, help drive some compliance. So just a few points about what accountants should be thinking about now that year-end approaches. And I know this is, there are lots of year-ends coming all times of the year, but this hopefully gives a little bit of a refresher on what we should and could be thinking about for R&D. So just some real headline stats to remind you, thousands of companies are out there making claims. The average benefit back to a client on R&D is over £50,000, close to sort of 58 now, I think. And roughly speaking, 35% take it as a credit, 55 take it to offset against corporation tax, and the rest are a mix of returns. But most of these refunds are against an historic tax that has been paid. Okay, so it's already been paid, the money's gone out, and this is then a refund coming back. So it's all retrospective, we know that, but how can you help your clients to get their benefit at the earliest opportunity? When should you be talking to them? And at what time could someone like us, or even if you do it yourself, what time could that be a meaningful intervention? So these are the main stages. Okay, so year ends, 3 months later, maybe the accounts are ready, getting done really quick. 9 months later, pay tax in a lot of cases. 12 months, filing the tax comps, 12 months plus, the R&D kicks off, and 15 months of benefit comes in. But if I tell you about where you can interact with this, as soon as the accounts are ready, the technical assessment should start then. Okay, if the technical assessment starts then, you're already looking at what the R&D potential is, because it always starts with that. It starts with what activities happened. Is there enough R&D in here? If there is, right, we need to have the account so that actually you can look at it and go, well, those are the costs associated with those technical activities. So for loss-making companies, again, you want to get this in ASAP, so then they can just get the credit, get their hands on that, and that's a real value additive thing to their business. Okay, but as soon as the accounts are ready, get the technical assessment underway. You could start a bit earlier than that in reality. If you knew that there was someone that's coming through with some good value on the accounts, you could start before to get ahead of the races. Profit-making companies, again, be ready for when you put the return in, so you don't need to go and do the same thing twice. You don't need to then wait till after the event and then go and do it again. And then once you're 12 months, if you're at 12 months plus past the year end and the accounts have been done, well, you can actually review historic claims. So if you've got a client that perhaps has done their R&D before, maybe they haven't spoken to you about it, maybe they've worked with another specialist, maybe they've, had to go themselves, whatever it is, there's always an opportunity to review what's gone in the past, and you can optimize every R&D tax claim once. Okay, so you can't do it more than that, so you can't optimize a claim twice, you can only do it once, but you can always review at any point your current financial year and 2 in the past. All right, so that's always on the table for you from an R&D perspective. So if a client comes in, a new client, you've won, fantastic news, and there's a load of things you're going to do to help them be better. That's normally their MO. This is one of them. This is one thing you can do. You can give them a desk-based review if you want to through us of what they've done before on their R&D, and see if there's any potential to uplift that. The desk-based review tells you if there's anything obvious in there, other things that stick out as good, bad, or ugly, and then you can get a feel for whether or not it's worth them doing it. But you can then drive some real value, some cash value, day one. So these two here, really, that's the bit that people often forget about. Okay, so it's when you've already done it, you're already down the line. Yeah, we've done that, no problem. Something might be nagging at the back of you thinking, hey, there could have been a bit more there, or that was complicated. They didn't really have the time to get into it. If you do think that that's happened with any of your clients and you want to speak to somebody who will do the heavy lifting, we will. Our service is an end-to-end service, and we'll be able to pick that up and run with it, and keep the time commitment from the client and from yourself to an absolute minimum. So look, for today, that's it, guys. I wanted to keep it there. I'm hopefully hopeful that has been in some way insightful, certainly on the stats and on the HMRC scrutiny side. I suppose one other thing that we might want to touch on quickly is the budget that came out just last week, or week before. We're still trying to find out some more detail. The devil is always in the detail with how these are going to be applied for R&D tax. But one of the big things that has come out of the budget was the inclusion of data on the software side as a claimable cost. And again, how that applies, we're not quite sure yet. But for big businesses and for smaller software development businesses, data has always been a consumable part of their R&D. As they go through, they need to have data to actually prove if the software works most of the time. And the inclusion of that's something that we've been certainly pushing back for a long time. We sit on the RDCC, which is the Research and Development Consultative Committee, which is how HMRC communicates with industry. So when we sit on that, we listen to a lot of what they say, we give feedback where we can, and the consultations that have been coming out over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, a lot of them are focused around things like this. So what should we do? How should we do it? What does industry think about the way we handle these things. So it's great to see that that's been heard and that data can be included. It's also nice to see, whilst it doesn't directly affect R&D, there was talk about cross-border charges, which again looks at sort of wider accounting implications. But cross-border charges is really about making sure that businesses that are here in the UK recognise their profits in the right way and in the right place. So if they are actually doing all their work elsewhere, and they're spending elsewhere, and they're contributing to other economies, well, they're not going to get their benefit here in the UK. All right, now that's not necessarily an R&D specific thing, that's a general thing, but there are definitely moves from HMRC about that. So businesses that are conducting their R&D overseas and trying to make claims here, there are now sort of processes in place to prevent that from getting out of hand and from keeping that cap to keep that cap in the right place. So that's it for today, guys. Very much appreciate your time. I think that's just about the half-an-hour mark. And Mark, any questions or anything that might have popped up while I've been talking?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dom. Thank you for that overview. In relation to the questions, only 2 questions have been posed on the questions tab so far. And please, guys, if you do have any further questions, please get in touch on the contact details screen you can see there. But yes, I think one you've already touched upon, Dom, in terms of what's your standout from the latest budgets, and thank you for recapping that at the end there.
Yeah, sure, and there will be some more to come. I mean, normally we're a first mover when it comes to communicating out on the budget. This time we thought we'd pause a little bit and let everybody else communicate theirs first instead of copying ours, but that's just a small thing. We actually want to wait for the detail to come through so we can give some more meaningful insight. So our socials will be sort of today, maybe tomorrow, and then we've got more planned over the coming weeks to give some more flavour on that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That'll be coming through from PFP as well to you guys.
Great. So I've got another few questions that are popping up here. The first one relates to the elevation platform. In terms of the elevation platform, what compromises as a small claim for the purposes of the software?
So it's qualifying expenditure of £35,000 and below, and
Great.
There are various checks and balances in the system as you go through. So it's really when you start to get to expenditure that grows above that, the claims are getting too complex, and you will need to go into technical detail where you start to qualify exactly what's going on and where. So it's and if anybody's got any specifics about that and they've got clients they want to say, hey, what about this, what about that, we'd be more than happy to discuss the specifics with you and give you a feel for what we think.
Great. And the second question from Nigel, what's the view on advance assurance for R&D tax credits? Well, you know, it's certainly an opportunity for people to jump in and get involved. I think it's really a case-by-case basis as to whether or not it's the best way forward. It does preclude you from going up from that number. You know, increasingly we don't see it all that often. We used to see it from some larger businesses that used to get involved, sort of larger SME businesses, but actually, you know, increasingly very small businesses go through and you know, just bung that through as an opportunity to get something on the board. But you know, it works in some quarters, in others it doesn't. And I think if you've got an opportunity like this where you can do a proper claim and have that properly verified and optimized, because that's the important thing, you want it to be optimized and you want it to be compliant, you know, there are enough solutions out there to go down that route, provided that you've got the desire to go ahead and do that. Great.
And sorry, Nigel, if there's a deeper question there about a specific one, we're more than happy to field that. Just let me know the details of it.
Thank you, Dom. And then another question coming through from Malcolm. Where a client receives a government grant for research purposes that's linked to an education setting, would the grant qualify for R&D?
So again, I wouldn't want to talk out of turn because we need to see the specifics of the particular project you're talking about and also the grant award. But just because someone's in a particular setting doesn't necessarily preclude them from a claim. It can change the way they receive that benefit. So again, we need to understand, as long as there's a limited side of the business and they have got accounts and they've got a tax bill, then okay, they can consider themselves for these innovation funds. But on the grant funding side, if the grant fund is as notified state aid, then it's potentially not going to be claimable. However, there are some cases where you can claim grant funding, but the rate may not be the full rates that you would get as an SME, assuming they are an SME, because mostly you have to be to get grant funding, unless it's innovate funding, in which case sometimes larger businesses do get those too. So the answer is it depends. I'm sorry, it's not as clear cut as that, but again, we're happy to have a look at the detail of that one if you'd like.
Great, thanks, Dom. I suppose that's all the questions that we've had coming through. But if anyone on the webinar today has got any further questions or would like to reach out on any of the areas that we've discussed during today's webinar, then please do get in touch. I know from a personal perspective, a lot of the member firms that I work with that have used the Elevation platform so far have found it to add real value, and there's been some great feedback since the launch of that. So again, please get in touch if that's something of interest. And yeah, I look forward to you all joining us again very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and thank you for attending today.
Thanks very much.